Okay, I believe we can start the class now. In this class, we will go through the third unit of your syllabus, which explains motivation as a concept. It explains motivation, what is gives you a definition of motivation, then what is frustration, and how these two concepts interact with human behavior. That is what is covered in this class. This is these topics are covered in the third unit of your syllabus. So these are the topics which are covered in this lecture. The very first one is motivation. The definition of motivation is given and explained, along with three important elements in motivation, which is needs, then drives, and incentives. The next one is type of motives. What are the different kind of motives? Then a concept called homeostasis, which is an important concept in motivation, which is explained from physiological point of view. That means from biological point of view, and which is also explained in terms of how it can interact with the psychology of a person. Then there are a number of theories which are focusing on explaining human motivation. So most of these theories, they try to define motivation and classify the different kinds of motivations human beings are having and how they are interacting with each other. So these will be explored. Then there is a hypothesis called frustration aggression hypothesis, which often used for explaining criminal behavior or violent behavior among human beings. So that will be explored. So the first topic is what is motivation. So I have a number of simple definitions of motivation so that you can understand it better. Motivation is one of the driving forces behind human behavior. So it's not just any particular behavior, any behavior, not just by human being, any organism which is driven by a process called motivation. So motivation is not just one thing; it is actually a process which drives or produces human behavior. Even simple behaviors such as drinking water, having food, going for a walk. All of these things can be explained in terms of motivation. So like that, any behavior which a person undertakes can be explained in terms of motivation. So this is another simple definition of motivation. Motivation is a process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. So goal-oriented behaviors are like something which a person focuses on doing, and that supporting factors which are preparing that person to do it. So those factors should initiate a person. That means that person should begin to put a effort to do what that person has to do. That is called initiation. Then not only it should initiate, it has to guide. So initiation will not often result in behavior. There should be a certain kind of guidance, and that guidance is provided and maintain that behavior as far as that goal is achieved. So that is what is explained in this definition. Motivation is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal oriented behavior. So anything which you have to do, it is not like cracking an examination or anything. So even simple things, if you want to do or do in your life, you need to have certain kind of initiations, certain kind of guidances, and certain kind of maintenances. That is what is given in this definition. Now, motivation is commonly defined as what explains why people or animal initiate, continue, or terminate a certain behavior at a particular time. So, you can see motivation in terms of the reasons for simple behavior or sometimes very complicated and prolonged behavior. That means, like, for a couple of years in your life, you perform certain things such as learning music, playing cricket for 10 years in your life. So this behavior also can be explained in terms of motivation. At the same time, simple things which you do in your life, like visiting your aunt, or a friend's house, making a call to another person, all of these things, motivation must be there. So motivation promotes micro behaviors as well as long goal oriented, sophisticated, or complicated behaviors. So these three definitions, you can use any of these definitions to understand the concept of motivation. So without motivation, behavior is impossible. Any behavior, even the most complicated or the most simple behavior of a person, need to be motivated, and there should be a process behind it. So that process is called motivation. Now let's look at three important elements in motivation. So these three important elements: one is need, the second one is drive, and the third one is incentives. So these three elements are used to define motivation of of organisms. When I say organisms, so most of these concepts are applicable for all animals, you know and it's not just human being. That is why I use the term organism. So a need. So first we will look at what is need, and then we will look at what is a drive and what is an incentive, and what are the difference between these three terms. A need is a lack or deficit of some necessity. So something which is actually required in your physical body, something which is required in your psychological well-being. That is called need. You need that particular thing in order to survive, in order to maintain a balance in your internal or in your psychological, you know psychological, psychological part of your mind. So that is called need. A need is a lack or deficit of some necessity. It is a state of physical deprivation that causes tension within an organism. That means, like, there is a balance, a perfect balance within your body. That means if it is water, if it is the kind of energy which is required in your body, for everything in your body there is a balance, and that balance is called the need. The tension caused when the organism is deprived of the basic necessities of life as food, water, and sleep causes the internal environment of an organism to be imbalanced. That means, like, see, when any of the things which you need to survive is decreased, so that means, like, you are in need of something, so that is called need. And why this need is explained in terms of explaining motivation. Why? Because need is an important thing. In need, when I explained motivation, I said initiation, something which needs to be initiated. So need is an important initiator of multiple kind of behaviors. So that is what. So need is the lack of something which is actually needed in your physiological or even psychological environment in your body, that in your mind, that is called need. The next one is need leads to drive. So when there is an imbalance of something, so when something is missing inside you, that is need. and which will lead to drive. That means like this imbalance will make you to do something in order to achieve that balance, and that motivation or that motive or impulse for you to behave in a particular manner in order to restore what is missing in your internal environment, that is called drive. Need leads to drive, which is the second step towards achieving your goal. Your goal is not yet achieved. If you are thirsty, there is a lack of water content inside your body, and that will initiate a drive inside you. So drive is when you try to search for water. So you walk to another place to find water. If you are in a lonely place without any water, you walk miles searching for water. So all of these are drives, which can be explained as drive. Drive can be defined as the state of tension or arousal produced by the need. The drive can also be considered as the original source of energy that activates an organism. So need is the imbalance, and that will put you in a tensed situation where you react to it. That is called drive. So what is incentive? The object of the environment that activates, directs, and maintain behavior is called incentive. So, in the example which I told you about a person who is deprived of water, or a person with a person who has a decline of water inside the body, the water can be considered as the incentive. Why? Because that incentive will drive that person into it, and also it makes sure that in future that person go to it in the same manner. Whenever that person has an imbalance of water, that person go to the same river for drinking water, or if you are sitting in a house, you go to the fridge, open the fridge, and drink water from it, or wherever the water is available. So that is called incentive. The object of the environment that activates, directs, and maintains behavior is called incentive. It can be anything as long as it has either positive or negative value in motivating behavior. So this need, drives, and incentives, these work together in order to make a person behave, no matter how big or small the need is. These three things, work together. So this definition, you may be thinking like this definition is, purely physiological. That means it's biological. So how about the psychological need, drives, and incentives? See, just like water, there are certain kind of elements, certain kind of material in the nature is required for you to survive. That means just to sustain the life, you need certain kind of things. At the same time, you need certain kind of uh, psychological elements in order to sustain your psychological well-being. So psychological well-being is also important, just like physiological well-being. So you need a certain kind of happiness inside you, in order for you to survive. Otherwise, what prevents a person from committing suicide, or what prevents a person from deciding to starve endlessly, or not to go out of his house, or take any decisions which are really bad for that person. So just like there are physiological needs, there are psychological needs, and these psychological needs also need to be balanced. And when there is a decrease of certain kind of satisfaction inside a person, that person will go out and do things, and that tension which results in the decline of that satisfaction is called drives. And the way that person can bring that balance up, or balance balance what is missing inside that person's mind. That is called incentive. For example, a person who is getting bored will go and watch a movie. So that movie can be considered as the incentive. So not every time we need to consider needs, drives, and incentives as something which is biological. It can also be psychological. So this image, would help you to understand how this motivation cycle works with need, drive, and incentive. So the very first one on top is the need. So need creates drives, and the drive will lead that person or organism to the incentive. And when that person receives the incentive, that will achieve the goal, and which again created another need. And this is what motivation cycle is called. Now let's focus on what are the types of motivation. See, there are different types of motivations depending upon where you're looking and what is your focus on. So, two different classifications of motivations I would like to give you, but you should understand that there are different kinds of classifications for motivation depending upon where you are looking. So, one particular classification which I would like to mention you is this intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. See, this classification says that a person's motivation can be classified into intrinsic or extrinsic depending upon where that motivation is coming from. So, where is that push coming from? Whether it is coming from outside the person or inside the person. So, intrinsic motivation is it can be explained as a person own feeling or own interest to do something, deciding to do something because a person is interested in it and enjoy doing it. So in intrinsic motivation, the reasons are internal. They come from within a person, and a person uh, need not any external push or pull in order to behave in a particular manner. That is called intrinsic motivation. For example, like a person from childhood feel like making paintings. This person used to paint. Nobody pushed that person to become a painter in his life, but he often paints. And in his life, that person is becoming a very successful painter. And that person makes his livelihood by selling his painting with so much, and obtain a lot of remuneration for his painting. So this is an example of intrinsic motivation. Now let's look at what is extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when a person produce a behavior because of external factors, because of other people asking them to do it, or because the law says so that you have to do it. So you see, just like we have to connect certain kind of ID cards now, the government says that you have to do it, and if you don't do it, there will be a problem in problem which you are going to face, and as a result of that, we will be doing it. So you are doing a you are doing a homework. When you are studying in school, you are doing a homework because the teacher asked you to do it. So the same homework can be done by you with intrinsic motivation. Sometimes the teacher will say that, okay, if you want, you can do it, or else you can leave it, but still you will do it because you actually like doing it. So some students, they like mathematics. Even if the teacher is not asking them to do it, they still do it because they enjoy doing it. So that is a kind of intrinsic, that is an example of intrinsic motivation. But if you do something out of the pressure or out of the circumstances, that can also be considered as, that can all be considered as external factors, and that is called extrinsic motivation. So this is another classification of motives. The one is biological motive, which is primary motives, and then social motives, which is secondary motives, and then personal motives. So you will find a lot of different kinds of different types of motives. depending upon where you're looking, just like I told you a while before. So this classification explains biological motive as hunger, thirst, need for oxygen, regulation of body temperature, need for sleep, avoidance of pain, elimination of waste, sex motive, maternal motive, all of these things. These are the biological motives, motivate a person to behave in a particular manner. So this is called primary motives because, satisfaction of these motives are essential for a person to progress in life or survive in life. For hunger, if a person is not taking food, uh, that person cannot survive. And these motives often work unconsciously or involuntarily. So just because of you have to eat, or a person is not having food just because of the awareness that the person may die if that person is not taking food. It's kind of involuntary. Involuntary means like you don't have to do anything purposely. That hunger will come to the person when the body needs food. The person feel hunger, and then that person need to go and take food. And thirst is also just the same. And if when the person need water, or the water level of the body is decreasing, that person feels thirsty, and all that person need to do is drink water. The need for oxygen, it is like it is there for every moment. And we breathe unconsciously. We don't have to voluntarily take air inside us. It happens throughout. Then regulation of body temperature, that means like when your body is very heat, it produces sweat. That why the body produces sweat is it is actually to cool down the body. And when you feel extremely cold, your veins will go inside the body, and it will not get revealed. And there won't be any sweating. The water content will be kept inside. The body will try to raise the temperature. So all of these things happens. And this is actually need most of these things are actually needed for your survival. And that is why it is called primary motives. Then social motives are there. You need to get appreciation from people around you. That is called achievement motive. You need to achieve certain things in your life. You need to express your anger to another person, and then you need to dominate. Then there are different kind of such motives which comes into the foray when you interact with people in the society. These are called social motives. Because these some of these motives, even if it is not there, a person is going to survive. But uh, the quality of existence will significantly affect if a person is not satisfied in many of these needs. And that's why they are called social motives or secondary motives. And then according to this classification, then again there is personal motives. So personal motives is like, it's not in interaction with the social environment or people around you. It is kind of hobbies a person is having, the kind of goals a person is setting, the kind of interest a person is having. All of these can be classified as personal motives. So these two classifications which I am giving you is like, the types of motives is, the first one was like intrinsic and extrinsic motives. So intrinsic motives are, more worthy than extrinsic motive, because the person is driven from inside. And a person doesn't need any external factors in order to do produce a particular behavior. And in this classification, the second classification, there are three kind of classifications: biological motives, social motives, and personal motives. Biological motives are called primary motives. Secondary motives are called social motives are called secondary motives. Another concept in motivation is homeostasis. So this I might have already touched when were explaining what is a need. So, homeostasis refer to an organism's ability to regulate various physiological process to keep internal state steady and balanced. That means, there is a state, there is a balance within the in the body of a person, and which has to be maintained. And only if it is maintained, that person can, person can live a healthy life, and that is called homeostasis. Stasis. These processes take place mostly without our conscious awareness. Just like I told you, the biological motives. You breathe voluntarily. No, no, involuntarily. You don't need to breathe voluntarily. Breathing happens involuntarily. Just like, the thirst happens involuntarily, and hunger happens involuntarily. So when there is a need for energy in your body, you feel hunger. When there is a need for water inside your body, you need thirsty. And all of these are actually to maintain the homeostasis inside your body, and that is called homeostasis. Your body has set points for a variety of states, including temperature, weight, sleep, thirst, and hunger. So when your body needs rest, you feel sleepy, and you have to fall asleep. When the level is off, homeostasis will work to correct it. For example, to regulate temperature, you will sweat when you get too hot, or shiver when you get too cold. So when you shiver, what you will do, you try to wear thick clothings or sweater. At the same time, when you feel too hot, you try to reduce your clothes, and you try to sit under the fan, or go out of a concrete building, and get more wind, to be in cold places. A person will try to do all of these things. So this homeostasis is actually a biological concept, which is there inside our body, and the body maintains its environment or environment balance through the process of homeostasis. And this homeostasis can result in a lot of behavior in human being. So homeostasis is an important motivation factor for so many of our behaviors, and that is why we are explaining homeostasis here. So this is a definition of homeostasis: a condition in which the internal environment of the body remains relatively constant despite changes in the external environment. That means, like, on the outside, the temperature may increase, the temperature may decrease, and depending upon that, the body adjusts. So the body has an optimum level of functioning. In order to function in the optimum manner, the certain aspects need to be maintained, and that is called this homeostasis. Examples would be the maintenance of body temperature and level of glucose in the blood. Now let's move into the motivation theories. See, there are several theories explaining what causes human behavior and what produces human behavior. Uh, there are several theories, and in your syllabus, you have to learn like three or four theories of motivation. And let's go through it one by one, and I will tell you the bare minimum to for you to understand the concept of the theories. So motivation theories generally explains what drives human behavior. So what is the reason for human behavior? How humans produces behavior. So all the previous slides explained what drives human behavior only, but uh, other than this biological needs, most of the psychological motivation theories try to explain, like, their focus is broader than the basic understanding of motivation. So they explain how human behavior are impacted by particular kind of needs, And then theories will also try to explain, different kind of motives. So some theories, classify motivations as needs. So people got different needs. So what are the different needs, and how these needs, you know interact with each other. So then again, if there are different needs, are there any hierarchy of needs? Some needs are very basic, and those needs are actually needed for us. And at the same time, some needs, maybe we don't need so much, but that is also needed for our psychological well-being. So there is a hierarchy of needs, and how does it function, and how human beings produce behavior, when these needs interact with each other. That is what explained in motivation theories. So the very first theory which you are going to learn is Maslow's hierarchy of need theories, which was given by Abraham Maslow. He lived from 1908 to 1970. So I might have mentioned his name. I actually mentioned his name when I were discussing the humanistic perspective of psychology in your classes. So humanistic, he was a very important contributor of the humanistic psychology, and his theory focuses on needs, the different kinds of needs which promotes human behavior throughout life. So what Abraham Maslow did is that, unlike other psychologists, he studied people who are famous and people who are, high achievers in life, people who are well uh, reputed people, and high achievers. They are the one whom Abraham Maslow studied, and see what the kind of ideas he came up with. He said, like, people have this hierarchy of needs which can be, depicted as a pyramid. On the bottom we have, physiological needs. So physiological needs are biological needs. So which includes breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. All of these things, you need to breathe in order to survive. You need food in order to survive. You need water in order to survive. And human beings also need sex, and which creates a lot of behavior. And a person need to sleep, and a person's homeostasis need to be maintained. Homeostasis is something which we just discussed before. And a person, need to excrete the waste material. That means eject the waste material from the body. That is what making a person to go to toilet from time to time. So all of these are biological needs or physiological needs. So something which is necessary for our body to function optimally, and that is called physiological needs. So this is the 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 basic need, or the basement of all needs. If this is not satisfied, a person cannot go to the higher levels. So a person who is hungry, he cannot go and or progress into other needs. So always that person will be searching for food or water, and only if that person gets enough of it, that person can go to the higher level of needs. So once a person is satisfied in the physiological needs, the person will develop other kind of needs, and that is security of body. What is security of body is that, once you have enough food, you need to take rest. You need the second priority of a human being is security. It's not just human being. You can also find, like, animals give more important to food. The food is once there is enough food, or once they had their stomach filled, they need to retrieve into a place where no wild animals will attack them. So that is the importance of safety needs. Once the physiological needs are met, a person need to find security, and that is called safety needs. So it also, generally when we say it is just security, it also in modern or contemporary society, in recent society, we can say that employment. a basic minimum income is required for a person. So yeah, some kind of support or security from other peoples, and that is also required for that person to progress to the next level. So the physiological need is met, a person can progress into safety needs, and once the safety need is met, a person can progress into love or belongingness. So love or belongingness is a relationship, so meaningful relationship with other people. That is what a person need next. Once they are satisfied with the physiological and safety need, they need to make friendship, they need to make a family, they need to have intimacy with other people, they want to start a family. All of these things have comes in the third level. So this is the middle level a person can go to, so that is love or belongingness. And once a person reach this level, uh, and then that person can go up to the next level, that is called esteem, self-esteem need. Self-esteem is when a person is appreciated by others in the society. So generally, people, people try to indulge in politics. They try to go to do social services at a particular stage in their life, when they have their other needs are met. So this is where they need some kind of approval from society, approval from people in society, and that is called esteem need. And once these esteem needs are also met, they can progress into the next level, that is called self-actualization. So self-actualization is the topmost hierarchy of need, which is mentioned by Abraham Maslow. And Maslow also stated that self actualization is only achieved by few people in the world. Like some famous people are example of self actualization. Sometimes, people, when they reach self actualization, they try to contribute to the society. Some wealthy men try to provide half of their wealth, or their entire wealth for social service. And so self actualization is a state where people try to find meaning for the life they have lived already, and that is what self actualization is. So sometimes they try to contribute to the entire society, and they try to find meaning for the life they have lived. Abraham Maslow studied people like Abraham Lincoln and Mother Teresa. So these are some few people who had shown exemplary behavior in the final stages of their life. So one more thing which we need to understand about Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory is that people don't need to always jump from one stage to another. Sometimes people skip these skip these stages. For example, sometimes the love and belongingness may not happen in some people's life. They straight away go to esteem. People who have failed family life, at the same time they can have they can go into the progress into the esteem needs. But at the same time, the physiological level is very important. Only if a person survives and achieve the physiological needs, although certain kind of things can be skipped, just like sex, they can skip it, but still most of these needs are essential for that person in order to progress. And what happens in many people's life, most of the people will not make it into self actualization, just I have told you before. Most of the people will do circles in between esteem and love and belongingness stage. Sometimes they fail to make meaningful relationships in their life, that is love and belongingness need, and they will not be able to progress. And so that is called fixation. They get fixated on a particular need, and they cannot develop. So, according to Maslow and the humanistic existential perspective, all human beings inside them, they have an inherent tendency to develop in their life. They They develop from physiological to safety needs, and from safety to love and belongingness, and then from there to esteem and self-actualization. But when the circumstances in the life or the environmental factors are totally against it, people cannot develop, and that results in problem behaviors. And not all the people in the modern world can develop into self actualization. Most of the people end up in the middle, and but some people actually make into self actualization. So this is what the idea of Abraham Maslow. So Abraham Maslow explained the behavior of human beings entire life with his theory of hierarchy of needs. Any behavior a person exhibit in life can be explained in any of these, in some of these needs, like physiological safety, love and belongingness, esteem, self-actualization. Any of these needs can explain any behavior of a person. So Nash theory is McClelland's motivation theory. So David McClelland, who proposed this theory of motivation, he lived from 1917 to 1998. He was an American psychologist. According to McClelland's motivation theory, you know, there are three kind of needs inside every human being. So humans psychology, a person's psychology is made up of three of these needs. One is need for power, and one is need for achievement, and one is need for affiliation. So need for power, it deals with domination. A person need to exert power on another people. So think about people who are in very powerful position, and they will have so many other people working under them. They can exert their decisions on other people, and their opinions will have higher hand over other people, and their opinions will be heard more than other people. So there are people with the need for power, and there are people with need for achievement, and there are people with need for affiliation. In fact, all the people have this need for power, need for achievement, and need for affiliation. So need for achievement is like being competitive in life, and achieving difficult things in life, like cracking a very difficult examination, or doing a very hazardous or very difficult physical task, such as climbing Mount Everest, or going for a 50 kilometers marathon. All of this can be considered as need for achievement. And then there are people with need for affiliation, and need for affiliation is like these people value relationship more than anything. They Most of their behavior will be directed at achieving friends, or romantic relationships, or trying to establish a very good family, or family relationship. All of this can be considered as need for affiliation. So all people have need for power, need for achievement, and need for affiliation, but in differences, in variations. Some people will have a lot of need for power, and very less need for achievement or need for affiliation. And some people will have a need for affiliation, more need for affiliation, and less need for power, and need for achievement. So a person's choice of career, and choice of study, or choice of actions or behavior, all will be influenced by these variations of needs. People who are in need for power, they will try to get into positions, powerful positions where they can dominate others. And need for achievement, they will avoid simple things in life, rather than they will go behind very difficult things. And need for affiliation, so the people with need for affiliation, they try to be a part of bigger organizations where they can interact with other people, and they make more friends. They will try to sacrifice more of their need for power or need for achievement in order to gain relationship. So these variations are making individual identity and differences of behavior according to McClelland's motivation theory. And the next theory is Murray's motivation theory. Henry Murray lived between 1893 and 1988, was an American psychologist, and his theory was described he described needs. So he also described needs, just like McClelland and Maslow. He also described needs. So Murray described need as a potentiality or readiness to respond in a certain way under certain given circumstances. So it is uh, when a person is prepared to respond in a certain way, that is called needs according to Murray. Murray again had this primary and secondary needs. So Murray had this classification of primary and secondary needs. Primary needs are just like what we have explained in the beginning in the types of motivation. Primary needs are basic needs that are based upon biological demands, such as the need for oxygen, food, and water. Secondary needs are generally psychological, such as the need for nurturing, independence, and achievement. While these needs might not be fundamental for basic survival, they are essential for psychological well-being. So Murray also said the same thing, like primary needs are essential for the survival of a person. At the same time, the secondary needs, which are psychological in nature, these are fundamental for psychological well-being. They actually need for creating and maintaining a mood which is essential for the life to go forward. So what Murray did is, like, Murray identified 24 such needs. So see, think about it. Maslow just identified five needs. So he kind of classified the needs into just five. Then McClelland classified three kind of needs, and now Murray actually classified 24 needs, and some of them are, not all of the needs are mentioned here in the slide, and some of these needs are ambitious needs, materialistic needs, power needs, affection needs, information needs. So just like McClelland, Murray also stated that people will have all of these needs, but in variations. Some people will have more ambitious need, some people will have more materialistic needs, some people will have more power needs and less of other needs. Like that, there will be variations in this 24 needs. So these variations in 24 such needs, which is what creates different kind of behavior according to Murray. All people have these needs, but each individual tend to have a certain level of each needs. And now the next theory which I would like to explain is Kurt Levin's motivation conflict theory. So Kurt Levin's he was a member of the Gestalt school of psychology. So it's a modern school of thought in psychology. So Kurt Levin's lived between 1890 to 1947. He was a German American psychologist. According to Kurt Levin's motivation conflict theory, he had a motivation theory in which he discussed about three kind of conflicts a person can come across in life. One is approach conflict, and the next one is avoidance conflict, and the third one is approach avoidance conflict. So approach conflict, when a person has to choose between two desirable alternatives, that means, like, you have two choices to make in your life, and when there are two choices, that will lead to a conflict. Which one to take? You can only take one, and you can only do one. So you have one life and you can do one thing, but you like both of the choices which you are having. That is called a conflict. So for example, watching movie with family and going out for an outing with friends. So you like your family and you want to watch the movie with your family. At the same time, you like your friends and you like going out with friends. So unfortunately, these two things are happening in the same day, same time. So it leaves an unstable equilibrium as one has to choose a comparatively more attractive alternative, and this is called approach conflict. Why? Because both are desirable actions or desirable behaviors which a person can indulge in, but both are happening at the same time, and this will result in kind of conflict according to Kurt Lewins. And then avoidance conflict. In this type of conflict, one has to choose between two undesirable alternatives. For example, choosing between tooth decay and going to dentist, it leads to a stable equilibrium. That means like you cannot, you don't like tooth decay, at the same time you don't like a dentist, so you are afraid of the equipments which are used by dentist, and you don't like the experience of going to dentist. They open up your mouth and put some kind of machines inside your mouth and do all sorts of things, and which you hate. So when that happens, you have to, you have two choices. You would like to avoid both, and that is actually resulting in an avoidance conflict. And then the third one is approach avoidance conflict. In this type of conflict, a person is attracted to and repelled by the same goal. For example, you have only one choice, but it has both advantages as well as disadvantages. For example, buying a new bike but not being ready to pay the installments. So you actually want to buy a bike, at the same time you cannot pay the installments. So, you want to put that purchase in EMI, and you don't want to pay the installments. It leads to a stable equilibrium as uh, as the positive and negatives get balanced. So what happens in avoidance conflict and approach and avoidance conflict is that it promotes inaction rather than action. So that is why. And why do we learn conflict is because sometimes there will be different kind of motivations for people, and these these motivation can end up in conflict with one another, which can drive the behavior in a particular manner. That is what is explained in Kurt Levin's motivation conflict theory. So this is an image explains Kurt Levin's motivation conflict theory. These three approaches. One is approach, where both the choices are desirable, and avoidance, both the choices are not non-desirable. And in the third one, the person doesn't know and confused with the positive and negative outcome of the same choice. There is only one choice, and it has both positive and negative outcomes. Okay, the next one is the frustration aggression hypothesis. So this is the fifth theory which we are learning about motivation. That is the frustration aggression hypothesis. So it is proposed by a number of psychologists: John Dollard, Neil Miller, Leonard Doob, Orwell Maurer, and Robert Sears in 1939, and further developed by other psychologists such as Neil Miller and Leonard Berkowitz. So there is not just one person behind this frustration aggression hypothesis. It is a theory which is developed, proposed, and evolved, developed by several other psychologists. The theory says that aggression is the result of blocking or frustrating a person's effort to attain a goal. That means like when uh, when a person is having a goal. So we actually learned in the beginning of this lecture that motivation is the process which initiates, guides, and maintains goal-directed behavior. So there is a goal which is initiated by a process, guided by the process, and maintained by the process. So the goal is, goal can be explained as the incentive, and the goal is, making a person to behave in a particular manner. So the theory says that aggression is the result of blocking or frustrating a person's effort to attain a goal. So this frustration aggression hypothesis, those people who are behind this frustration aggression hypothesis are not just psychologists. They are, some of them are criminologists, and they wanted to apply this concept into, criminal behavior and why people behave violently. And unlike the other motivation theories, this theory focuses on what produces aggressive behavior. The theory says that aggression is the result of blocking or frustrating a person's efforts to attain a goal. So, what happens when the drive when the drive is, resulting in certain kind of behavior for satisfying or attaining the goal, and what happens when it is prevented or blocked by obstacles in society or obstacles in one's or circumstances in one's life. All of these things can lead to frustration. So this image explains what is frustration aggression hypothesis. There is the drive to goal in the beginning, and which leads to obstacle to a goal, and which leads to frustration. So what happens when the obstacle is put forward in the way of a person's drive to goal is that person will get frustrated. So frustration is a state of mind in which, when someone's objective is blocked, and that results in a negative feeling, and that is called frustration. And that frustration can lead to anger, and anger will lead to a tendency to become aggressive. So there is a tendency to become aggressive, and which will eventually lead to catharsis. Catharsis is like when the aggression take place, aggression, finds life. So there will be people with aggression, but still they are, trying to control it and live normally. But at one point of time, this aggression will turn into catharsis. That means, they are acting out on their aggression, and that will leads to violent acts, which will result in, conflicts with other people or conflicts with other organizations, which will lead to loss of lives, or injury to other people, or violent behaviors. So this is what frustration aggression hypothesis states. uh, when a person's drive to goal is blocked, that person can get frustrated, and that frustration can lead to anger, aggression, and finally acting out on that aggression, which creates, criminal behavior, which give life to criminal behavior. Okay, so with this, I would like to come to the end of the lecture, where, just go through the topics which we have covered in this lecture. First, we had a definition for motivation, a goal-oriented behavior, which initiates goal-oriented uh, process, which initiates, guides, and maintains a particular behavior, that is called motivation. Then there are needs, drives, and incentives. So that process is, cut down into different segments in needs, drives, and incentives. Need is the absence of something which is actually required for the normal functioning of a person, and the state that absence of or the imbalance results, that is called drives. And incentive is that the goal which attracts an organism to behave in a particular manner. Then types of motive, we have gone through two kind of classification. One is extrinsic and intrinsic, then biological, then primary, secondary, and personal motives. These are the two different types of motives. At the same time, I also mentioned that there are so many other kind of motives, depending upon where you are looking at. So homeostasis is the biological balance and the physiological balance in a human being's or an organism's body, and the lack of it resulting in particular behaviors. So homeostasis is an important motivator for so many behavior in organisms. Then motivation theories, Maslow came up with the five hierarchy of five different kind of needs. A person to need to go through these hierarchies. Sometimes people will get fixated on particular needs, and only few people will go to the top most hierarchy. Then McClellan came up with need for achievement, need for power, and need for affiliation. The three kind of needs McClellan came with, and there will be variation in these needs in each of the people, and depending upon that, their behavior might differ. Murray came up with 24 different kinds of needs, and again there will be variations in these needs, and which results in different kind of behaviors. Kurt Levin's motivational conflict theory, he had three kind of approaches in dealing with motivational conflict. Then frustration aggression hypothesis, which we just now came across, obstacles, uh, obstacles faced by people when they are trying to achieve goal, in their drive to goal directed behavior, which will really lead to anger, frustration, anger, and catharsis. And that is what frustration aggression behavior, which explains frustration leading to criminal behavior. Okay, with this, I would like to complete today's class. I will come up with another class, and those students who missed the classes, please scroll back, and you can just watch it again. It will be there available in my YouTube channel. Thank you for participating in the class. Take care, all of you. Bye.